But he's had this challenges, I'm sure I'll explain it to you, interview him, on his shoulders that are just brutal because he's just overlifted weights for years. And he's a race car driver. I mean, everything's pedal to the metal. It's a perfect metaphor for my friend. And he goes, Tony, I went in there for 3 hours and I felt nothing. After all this buildup, he said, I felt nothing. So I thought, well, I've done too much damage, it's going to take something different than that. And he goes, then a few days later, I thought, what the hell? Some of the other people talked about going there and sleeping there. So he goes, Tony, you don't understand. I've been having a hard time sleeping 1 or 2 hours in a row. And he goes, I can't believe you have this. You have this in your home. Once again, I'm always looking for answers, right? Because I'm looking to increase my energy, my strength. I mean, I'll give you an idea. I had a group follow me for 3 years. They measured me on stage, everything. I wore a $68,000 device that measures heart rate variability, everything you can imagine. They took my blood, they took my saliva, they checked my hormones. And then they did it to my audiences. And they found some interesting things, like I jump 1,000 times a day on stage, and I weigh 285 pounds. So every time I come down, it's 4 times the body weight. So he said, Tony, that's 1,000 jumps times 1,000 pounds. That's 1,000,000 pounds of pressure in a single day, and you're doing 4 days in a row. When they did my bone mass, they couldn't believe it. They said, this is humans. These are extraordinary athletes. This is something we never measured before. I'm 99.999% more than they've ever measured in a human. If you've ever been running with a friend and you get where you can't talk, that's because the lactic acid hits a 4. I'm at an 18 and still speaking, to give you an idea. I have the same lean muscle mass as a defensive lineman in the NFL, right? I am burning 11,300 calories in a single day. I didn't think that was possible, but to give you an idea, I thought that was impossible, but chess players can burn 4,000 calories not moving. I burn 3,500 before I get on stage, to give you perspective.
Wow.
So in order to support all that, I do hyperbaric oxygen, I do cryotherapy, upstairs, I have all these devices here in my home. So I was in Australia, and I knew I needed to get some hyperbaric oxygen. I needed to feed my nervous system that oxygen. I've been pushing so hard. And so I called this facility, said, great, I come over. And then they said, well, we're sorry, we're running a little late. Do you mind waiting in the meditation room? Sure. So I sit in the meditation room. It's kind of weird. I see these 4 computers with this code going across it. It's like, that's interesting. And so I'm sitting there and reading everything else. And I felt myself just starting to I was in there for only 20 minutes. And I started feeling myself just dropping down, really relaxed, but more relaxed than I was ready for. And so I came out, I said, what are those devices? They said, it's this EESystem. I said, what is it? They said, well, they tried to explain it to me. They weren't really good at explaining it, or I wasn't good at understanding it. Maybe it was my fault. But, I knew something about different types of waves electronically and what it does to the cells in the body. I've obviously studied some of that, so interesting. But I was skeptical still. I thought, well, maybe I was just really tired, but felt profound. So I called my wife, Sage, and my trainer, Billy, and another member of my family, Mary, and I said, come over here and get a massage or something, but I want you to sit in this thing and just tell me what you experience. And everybody had this experience. So I got back, I called, and I said, explain to me how this works. They did. And I said, what's the biggest units you've got? Because I got to charge this body up, right? Because they're talking about charges, the electrical charges in the cells, recharges the body. And so I said, well, I have this room, this salt room I built. And so we do our massages and meditations and so forth. And I said, what's the most you've ever done? And at that point, it was 16. And so they put these 16, they built it in, it looked beautiful. And people come in and go, what the hell is this? And after a little period of time, you feel it. And then I'm talking to my buddy, Dan, who's obsessed like I am. He's always looking for breakthroughs. He's a bodybuilder and a race car driver. And he has the Beverly Hills, center, rejuvenation center that he brings and takes all these celebrities and turns them around. And we both use exosomes and, we're just we pitch and catch with each other. Fantastic, brilliant guy. And so he calls up and, he's an enthusiastic guy anyway, but he is so passionate. He goes, Tony, I've had this experience. And he goes, mom. And he starts describing this. I said, I think I have that. I said, I have a room of that. I said, tell me about your experience. So he told me about a friend of his who had Parkinson's and how they went in for this session and felt better. And after 3 or 4 days, there was no tremor. Like, what? And he goes, and this other person, and he started telling stories. And some of it, but I know he's as skeptical as I am, because I know, Tony, it sounds absurd. He goes, but, he's had this challenges, I'm sure I'll explain it to you, interview him, on his shoulders that are just brutal because he's just overlifted weights for years. And he's a race car driver. I mean, everything's pedal to the metal. It's a perfect metaphor for my friend. And he goes, Tony, I went in there for 3 hours and I felt nothing. After all this buildup, he said, I felt nothing. So I thought, well, I've done too much damage. It's going to take something different than that. And he goes, then a few days later, I thought, what the hell? Some of the other people talked about going there and sleeping there. So he goes, Tony, you don't understand. I've been having a hard time sleeping 1 or 2 hours in a row. And he goes, I can't believe you have this. You have this in your home. He said, I said, well, tell me about it. He goes, no, no, now they stack it. They do 24. They do this. I said, no, I think I have 16. He goes, no, but it's not. And then I talked to Dr. Michael, and she was saying, no, no, it's not arithmetic. It's geometric. And also the screens are bigger than the ones I have. And so I'm having 24 of them put in where I work, like, 12, 12, 12 in the corners, or 6, 6, 6 in the corners. And I'm going to do it also in our master suite. We've ordered them. They're going to be here because I went to Boca. So she let me come when no one was there. So, I could just have privacy. And then I spent the night. I slept in this thing, and I had the same, not as bad as my buddy, but I've had some shoulder pieces, some smashing, some things I've been doing in my workouts and trainings. And it's like, I didn't feel any pain. So it's like, I called him and goes, okay, let's get 24 of these things, because I got everything else but this device. And I went back a second time just to see what else I'd feel. I just felt so good. I was like, okay, oh, what's the downside of this? There's only upside as far as I can see from this component. And then I called Dr. Michael, and I got her to describe more of it. It's interesting because there's a doctor that I have in Dallas that I've sent, I think, 6 people to that were all terminal, from a young boy that had testicular cancer and was given 3 months to live. 3 years ago, he's totally healthy today, to somebody with glioblastoma, which I know is pretty brutal, brain cancer. And everything he does is to measure those fields in the body and to restore them to that balance. He talks about 60, 70, 50 to 70. And I actually have a device that you can measure with so you can see it. So I'm real excited to see where I am and then go into the field for that period of time and see what the pieces are. It'll be an interesting way to measure it. I also think it'll be great for hormonally to see what happens for my family as well, because the hormones affect so much of your life, and they're affected by so many different elements. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But, the quality of your life is the quality of life of yourself. And they are these many, forces of energy. And that's why I try to tell people, life force, to me, that's what it's all about. Life force is the force of energy. It's the energy of your life. But the quality of the life of your cells is the quality of life of your organs, the quality of life of your body is the quality of your life. So anything that can enhance that, that's why I'm personally so immersed in this and so excited about this. I really want to get out of this technology as well. I want to experience more of myself. I think it'd be great for you guys to publish, I know, someplace where more of the science is, because that's what I try to do so people know. But also, regardless of the science of anything, the best test of anything is, what does it do to you, right? We're all somewhat unique, but the fundamentals are still the same. It's all bioelectrical energy that makes us alive. And if we can enhance that, why wouldn't you? I really believe business is a spiritual game, because I have 111 companies. We do over $7 billion in business across multiple different kinds of industries. I know business background, but I have one complete obsession: do more for others than anybody else does in your category. If you do more for other people than anybody else in your category, you build a brand. When you build a brand, people will seek you out. When they seek you out, the business will grow. And so the more what does every religion in the world teach, regardless of which religion you believe in? I'm personally Christian, but it doesn't matter. It's like, treat thy neighbor, love thy neighbor like thyself. If you can put other people first and give your all in business, you always prosper. You have to still know how to learn tools to run a business. I get that, and I teach people that too. But I think it's, to me, it's like, we are so lucky to live in a country where there's free enterprise, because that's how these breakthroughs happen. Because somebody's an entrepreneur, somebody like Chelsea, who's this woman who's just on fire to help people. She puts herself on the line, she makes an investment, she builds a little center, and she's there. She's there to over deliver for every human being that's there. And it's healing just to meet somebody like that, much less to be in that kind of environment. And I think business is, to me, one of those realms. It's just another way to measure the quality of your contribution. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it very much. But I want to plant seeds with everybody that if you're an entrepreneur out there, I'm a brother or sister with you, because I know you took risks, but you got to take care of your energy in your life, because if you don't take care of this, there's nothing left to give to other people.